us on tax day, April the 15th of 2015. Hopefully you have your taxes done and you've already submitted them. I think you have until midnight to get a postmark that will keep you from being penalized if the IRS decides to go after you. And if you've ever been through an audit, my friend, it is not a pleasant journey. I've been audited twice. I had no reason to fear other than the fact that my first audit, when I was called a liar because of the occupation I was in. In the second audit, I was told that they didn't care what information I had, and if I didn't like it, I could take them to tax court, where you get tax justice, I guess. So that's a little off point perhaps, but hopefully you got your taxes done, got them in. Maybe you've even got a refund by now. The government needs your money, however, because they're spending $1 million a minute. That adds up rather quickly. All right, well, I've got a couple of things for you. I have to start off, and I really would rather that I didn't have to, but I have to start off by sharing with you the passing of a dear friend. For many of you, certainly of my wife and I, Dr. Nellie Zaltzman. Dr. Zaltzman passed away April the 5th of this year, just about a week ago. And I'll just read to you from the obituary, perhaps you saw it. Nellie Zaltzman, 1942 to 2015. Dr. Nellie Zaltzman, age 72, passed away peacefully at home April 5th, 2015 after a long battle with cancer. Dr. Zaltzman was a wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. She was a medical doctor and instructor of Russian language at Idaho State University for many years. Nellie was born during World War II in the Russian Ural Mountains, where her family escaped Nazi aggression. 11 members of her family died during the Holocaust. After immigrating to Israel from Minsk, Belarus in the early 1970s, Nellie and her family moved to Pocatello, Idaho. That was in 1988. And Nellie and her husband, Dr. Arthur Zaltzman, have called Pocatello home since then. Nellie was particularly active as a leader in Zonta International and the Temple Emmanuel congregation. She loved Tupperware parties, her dog, hosting family and friends, and collecting paintings and other collectibles. She is survived by her husband, Dr. Arthur Zaltzman, her brother Yefim, her daughter Maggie, her son Chaim, her son-in-law Dan, her daughter-in-law Jennifer, and her grandchildren Aiden, 17, Nia, 14, Sabrina, 4, and Maya, 1. Memorial services were held April 8th at Temple Emmanuel. And there was a very nice turnout in her memory. I would say 150 to 200 people. Nellie and her husband, Arthur, have been dear friends of ours for about the last 8 years. And in listening to the eulogies that were presented, it was very interesting to see the portrait of a lovely woman, someone whom we love dearly, and being reminded of the kind of person she was. Not the least of is generous to a fault. She loved to do things that made you happy. And one of the things that made me happy were Nellie's deli pickles and pickled tomatoes. And I'm just finishing the last bottle of pickles, and every time I have one of her lovely pickles or wonderful pickles, I will think of her and her tomatoes. I don't need those to think of her, but they remind me of what a special woman she was. She had suffered with cancer for many years, and there was an irony to the fact that she was a medical doctor, so she knew what was happening. She was a brave woman, and we are going to miss her dearly. Her husband has relocated to be nearer his daughter, and we're going to miss him too, because it won't be easy for us to just drop by in an afternoon or in the morning for a cup of coffee and some conversation. So Nellie Zaltzman, Dr. Nellie Zaltzman, dead at age 72. God bless her memory. I just learned today of another dear friend. You may remember Mike Adams, who was on radio out of Idaho Falls, but picked up here locally on the same station that has Rush Limbaugh and Hannity and the different conservative hosts. Mike Adams' wife, Paulette, passed away today. Paulette had been seriously ill for many years. Mike had had his hands full taking care of his beloved wife. He never complained, and she didn't complain, but it was difficult, and we're very sorry to hear of Paulette Adams passing on today. So please keep Mike in your prayers, and he and his family, while they are grieving, will certainly be supported by your prayers. And God bless her memory also. Well, I don't have to tell you that there's a lot going on. The political race has opened up now. We have about 18 months of well, we have 21 months of the reign of terror to continue, about 18 months, and we'll have the elections and all that, and it's going to be a real whiz-bang deal. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. Let me quickly share with you a couple of things that I do every year now, or every week, I should say. Many of you may be familiar with this woman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and boy, what a piece of work she is. She's the DNC chairwoman, the Democrat National Party chairwoman, and boy, she is a complete and utter leftist, liberal, commie pinko, bedwetting Democrat. She is a beaut. And she got into a spitting contest yesterday and again today with Rand Paul and I think with Mario Rubio. Whenever you talk with, you watch Debbie Wasserman Schultz, you watch her talking, and it's like turning on the crank machine and then sit back and listen to the liberal left-wing crud that comes out of the liberal left. And she is the spokeswoman. She's articulate, passionate, nasty as a viper. Well, apparently she didn't like having to answer a question that was being posed to her by Wolf Blitzer, of all people on CNN. Wolf Blitzer is certainly not even a moderate. He is very much a liberal progressive. But they were talking about abortion and whether or not that's going to be a trigger issue in this campaign. It looks like it won't be that big an issue unless she can make it that way or some of her fellow travelers can make it that way. But it was interesting when Wolf Blitzer was trying to get her to come clean about the Democrat line on abortion. And Schultz did not want to come clean about it because abortion, by and large, is not popular. It is legal, but it is not necessarily popular. Something like 80% of the American public do not believe that abortion should be used routinely for pre-birth or before children are born, and most Americans do not like it in somewhere in that after the 3 trimesters. The choice people get kind of wishy-washy and mushy before the 3rd trimester. After the 3rd trimester, they start getting real wishy-washy, and so apparently, and I don't know who the pundit was who was trying to put a little stick in Rand Paul's eye. Now remember, Rand Paul's a medical doctor. He and his father both. And Rand Paul was asking at what point was being asked at what point abortion is okay. Is it okay at the 3rd trimester? Is it okay the day before birth? Is it okay the same day the birth is supposed to take place? And his comments were basically, well, how do you feel about killing a 7 or 8 or 9 pound baby? And I'd never thought in those terms. Certainly I'd thought in terms of the how old that child was, 7, 8, 9 months, whatever. And I'd thought of the different methods by which they, in my opinion, murder these babies. But I had never thought about it in putting it in a weight context. When I was born, I weighed 10 pounds. That's a big baby. I think the average babies are right around 7.5 to 8.5 pounds. So think to yourself, even if you're a Democrat and you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, think to yourself, how willing are you to kill a 7-pound baby? And that somehow gives a different light to, rather than saying a baby who's 8 months along, how about an 8-pound baby? Is it okay to kill a 9-pound baby? And remember, one of the more favored ways, if you will, to dispatch this baby who is unwanted for whatever reasons is to put a pair of surgical scissors in the birth canal and sever the child's spine and cut open the base of the skull. This is a horrible procedure, still very commonly practiced by, guess who? The Planned Parenthood people and their friends. Now, so Debbie Wasserman tried to put a stick in the eye of Rand Paul and I think Mario Rubio, trying to make them to be the bad guys in the eyes of the pro-abortionist people. And I found it ironic as I was thinking about this. I recall, and perhaps you do, after the Vietnam War had come to its inglorious end, and our GIs who had been winning the war, it was their politicians who gave it up. But when our GIs were coming back from overseas, and you had all of these Clintons and a lot of their friends, Wasserman wasn't born then, so she couldn't be part of it, who were very busily yelling epithets at American soldiers coming back from overseas and calling them baby killers. And now I pose a question to you. It's rhetorical, but nonetheless a worthy question. And I would like to know how many Democrats are willing to answer this honestly. How many military veterans do you know who ever, with forethought and design, murdered babies? I know of none, and I'm sure you know of none. But Planned Parenthood does it to the tune of 1 million babies a year. 1 million babies a year. And they called veterans from the Vietnam War baby killers. Who are the real baby killers? The baby killers are the liberal progressives who feel that it's okay to kill a baby if it's in the way, even when it's 7 or 8 or 9 pounds, or when it's 8 or 9 months along. In fact, it is perhaps rare but not uncommon for babies to be brought forth from the womb and then set aside to die because they are inconvenient for some mothers, not all of them. Are there cases where mothers really need an abortion? Yeah, there are medical cases where they really have, and there are some husbands and wives who would say, if it were to maintain the life of the mother, if that had to be done, that might in some people's minds be acceptable. In the case of rape or incest, in some people's minds that would be acceptable to go ahead and kill the baby. Whether it's the baby's fault or not is unimportant. Is that baby a human being? Well, depends if you're talking to Deborah Wasserman Schultz and her ilk, or if we're talking to people of another mindset, whether or not that's a human being. I would posit to you that it is. But there is something that you can do if you feel that a baby has a right to live, that it should be born, that it should be nurtured and loved, then I would suggest that you contact Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, a Christ-centered, non-profit Christian ministry offering affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. You can get hold of Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, and maybe you'll have something directly to do with saving a life, a baby's life, maybe even a mother's life. Call them, please, at 208-478-HOPE, Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. And the next time you hear some left-wing, liberal, progressive touting the merits of choice, ask them where their choice draws the line. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE. Please give them a call. Also, I want to remind you quickly about Rig and James Page, the benefit that they're having with the the name of the organization, Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. If you can attend on Saturday the 11th at 11:30 p.m. at the Bannock County Fairgrounds, they'll start off with Exceptional Kids Rodeo. At 12:30 they'll have a mini bull riding event, and at 1 o'clock the benefit bull riding, 3 sections and a short go. And throughout the day they'll be having a silent auction to raise money. And this is money that goes every year. They select a child that needs help. In this case, this young 2-year-old Rig and James Page, this baby really, he and the family could really use your help. You can buy tickets, 5 for $20 or 1 ticket for $5. Contact them at, the title again is, bear with me here, Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. And go online for that and see what you can do. You may want to go to that. And that is, again, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. This is past. I've got April 11th. I thought I was up to date on that. Never mind. I'm sorry that I took your time with that. I hope you got involved. And I hope you were the lucky winner of their saddle. And I hope they raised a lot of money. Well, this is not past due, and so forgive me for that. The Irish Hoolie that I told you about, and that's going to be Friday, April the 24th at the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building, 300 North Johnson Avenue, 5:30 p.m. until 10 p.m., $28 per person, limited seating, so you want to contact them as quickly as you can, or you can go to Our Lady's Bookstore at 1023 Yellowstone Avenue, or you can go to Falling Rock Productions at 348 North 3rd Street and get your tickets for Friday, April the 24th for an Irish Hoolie, and that will be a party. That will be a ball. Also, if you are interested in things Irish, remember about the Friends of Irish Studies of Idaho, the Beginning Irish Immersion Weekend. This is an Irish language study course, and that'll be April 25th and 26th. and it's at 1901 Alvin Ricken Drive in Pocatello from 9 a.m. to 4:30 each day. And you can contact Garth Lamsett at 851-1147. 851-1147. Tell them you're interested in the Beginning Irish Immersion Weekend, April 24th and 25th. And finally, last but not least, Friday, the 17th, at 11 a.m. at the, let's see, where's this being held? Perkins Family Restaurant here in town, and you all know where Perkins is, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. An important briefing, post-legislative session update. And this is going to be by Idaho Senator Russ Fulcher, who is on the Idaho Freedom Foundation Board, and J. Scott Moody, Chief Executive Officer of State Budget Solutions. And that should prove very interesting. If you haven't had the opportunity to see Senator Fulcher speak, or a very personable guy, very knowledgeable, a very worthy representative of all of us in the Senate. And that will be, again, this Friday at Perkins from, 11 o'clock till 12:30. And if you need to give them a call, and I forgot to ask you to have a pencil next to you. I always say have a pencil and paper handy if you're interested. You can call the office at 258-2280, 258-2280, extension 210, and that's Idaho Freedom Foundation. All right. Okay. Well, we've got a couple of things we're going to talk about tonight. Yesterday was the 150th anniversary of the assassination of President Lincoln. It's hard to imagine that we had a president assassinated while he was still president. Before, and after that we had McKinley and then Kennedy, of course. But in 1850, the Civil War was just winding down, and so it was just winding down, or it just ended. I forget. I get a little confused on the dates there. 150 years ago, and that is still. Even if you're only learning about it in the history books, it's still very fresh that our president was murdered. Percy Sledge. Percy Sledge was a rock and roll singer, went from being a hospital orderly to being a rock and roll icon, basically. In 1966, he recorded a song called When a Man Loves a Woman. Do you remember that? When a Man Loves a Woman. He died yesterday, 74 years old. And then one of the best stories we have tonight, and where did I put the photos? I don't want you to miss this. Well, we'll get to it. Harry Reid, one of my favorite people. He's right up there with Nancy Pelosi and so many other wonderful human beings. Harry Reid. Now, remember it's been about 3 weeks ago, I guess now. Remember he showed up on television. I think they first showed him on the floor of the Senate wearing his Mr. Cool Guy sunglasses. And most of us were saying, what the heck? And then you could see right under the right lens, you could see this pretty visible bruise, a big one. And later we saw him without the sunglasses, and boy, his face was a mess. Initially, I thought maybe he'd had a nose job. Then I realized, no, that was much too much bruising for a nose job. If you know about nose jobs, most people get what's called raccoon eyes, after the nose is worked on. This was far beyond that. Matter of fact, I think, these are not the best pictures. Here's a picture of old Brother Harry with just a Band-Aid over one eye, and now here's the real story. Remember, the story was being told that he was working out with a piece of his home workout gym equipment, and I guess one of them is supposed to be a rubber band thing that supposedly he had it hooked to his shower door, which is made of glass, and supposedly the band snapped and whacked him in the face. Well, there may be more to it than Brother Harry would like us to know. Not that he cares. If you've seen him interviewed recently and he asked very pointed questions, now that he's not going to be running for Senate again, he has basically said, pound sand up yours, I don't care what you have to say. He doesn't even try to cover the fact that he was very, very open about this when basically he was asked about lying during the last election. In essence, he said, yeah, I lied, so what? We won, that's all I care about. It's a good representative of the people. A Breitbart News investigation of the home exercise accident story told by Senator Harry Reid, Democrat from Nevada, and sources familiar with the incident, has uncovered facts which appeared to discredit his version of events surrounding a New Year's Day incident that left him with gruesome injuries to his eye, face, and ribs. On January 22nd, 3 weeks after the incident, Reid told reporters on Capitol Hill this version of how he obtained the injuries. Now, this is his version. "I know there are a lot of rumors as to what happened, but that's very simple. My wife and I were in our new home. I was doing exercises that I've been doing for many years with those large rubber bands, and one of them broke and spun me around, and I crashed into these cabinets and injured my eye." You know, I ran into a doorknob. "It didn't knock me out, but it sure hurt. And I was taken to the hospital, and we came back here after a couple of days. I have some bones broken around my eye." Sources familiar with the incident said Reid was exercising in his bathroom with the exercise band attached to the shower door. Politico reported that same day. Politico. Resistance bands, or exercise bands, as sources familiar with the incident described them to Politico, or rubber bands, as Reid referred to them, are inexpensive exercise devices that consist of a length of cord made of stretchable material, usually some form of rubber or latex, that sell for between $10 and $42 or $40. From the moment the story broke, many have been highly skeptical of Reid's claim his injuries came from a home exercise accident. Most of this skepticism, based mostly on speculation and the gruesome nature of the injuries, led some to offer a version of an alternate story that somebody beat up Senator Reid. It's pretty obvious from the photographs that somebody beat the bejesus out of the soon-to-be former senator from Nevada. And yet the national media has uncritically swallowed the cover story that exercise equipment was to blame for the loss of sight in the former majority leader's right eye. Baloney, Michael Walsh wrote at PJ Media. On Friday, Rush Limbaugh expressed his own skepticism about Reid's accident story. By the way, this is Rush Limbaugh. Does anybody believe that Harry Reid really had an accident with his exercise machine? Does anybody really believe that's why Harry Reid is still bruised and still wearing dark glasses? What, months after this accident with his exercise machine? I don't believe for a minute that whatever happened to Harry Reid has anything to do with an exercise machine unless somebody repeatedly threw him into it. Harry Reid looks like and is acting like, and now with this announcement behaving like, somebody who may have been beaten up. Nobody, I've never seen anybody have an accident with an exercise machine that ends up suffering symptoms much like Harry Reid for as long as Harry Reid has. Well, the possible real story has come out. Now here's a picture of Brother Reid. This is a recent picture. He's not quite as badly bruised. His eye is still taped over. And here's a picture of his brother, Larry Reid. Now you can't really see from your point there. We can't do a close-up. They do favor each other. They can't really deny each other as far as their sibling relationship. And his brother has been pretty beat up here too. There's a picture of the two of them together. And here's a picture of Harry Reid that you just don't see every day. I had never seen this before. This is a picture of Harry Reid taken August 8th of 2012 by the sheriff of Clark County in Las Vegas, Nevada. I don't know what the incident was. I don't think this was photoshopped. He was arrested for something. The story is probably one of his many DUIs. Apparently, brother Harry is a wife beater, among other things. And the story that came out on Rush Limbaugh today, and I'm looking for more news on this, is that Harry and Larry were someplace between Henderson and Searchlight, Nevada. Now, if you don't know about, Henderson is just a suburb of Las Vegas anymore. Many years ago, when I was a boy in Las Vegas, Henderson was another city, quite a distance from Las Vegas. But Las Vegas has grown so much that Henderson is really just part of it is a separate city, but it's just a suburb of Las Vegas. Somewhere between Henderson and Searchlight. Now, Searchlight, and I don't think it has changed much over the years. When I was a boy, many people don't know, prostitution is illegal in Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is. Prostitution is legal in the state of Nevada, but it's by county. And in Clark County, it is illegal. Regardless of what you know about Las Vegas and the hookers and everything else, it is a crime to be a prostitute or get caught being a prostitute in Las Vegas. So those who lived in Las Vegas for many years, rather than get themselves in a jam with the local authorities, would go to Searchlight. Searchlight was the brothel for southern Nevada. What a fitting place for Harry Reid. Well, it appears that Harry Reid's brother, apparently Harry and Larry got into a knockdown drag-out, as evidenced by both of them have been beat up by somebody. And later, Harry was found Well, his car was found abandoned in the Meridian in the highway going to Searchlight. The story was that Harry apparently showed up at an AA meeting and claimed to have had a blackout, during which he and his brother got into a duke out, and I don't know who was the loser in that. But apparently the Nevada State Highway Patrol says, no, Harry was drunk driving. I mean, Larry was drunk driving, and we caught him in the car. We don't know about Harry and how he got out of it. He is a sitting senator in Nevada, need I say more. The lies and mendacity of our public servants knows no bounds. And it's not just Democrats. We've got some real Butte Republicans. Remember our famous tap dancer from here in our own state. I thought that was kind of an amusing thing, Harry and Larry. All right. We're going to talk about a couple things. Well, let's get caught up a little bit in the news, but then we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about one of the subjects that I've been talking to you about now for weeks, months, actually a couple of years. And in this case, we're going to talk about Sharia. And we're going to talk about Sharia because there are now a couple of programs on public access, this channel, where there are people who are trying to put a better face on Islam, if you will, but it's not the true face of Islam. And one of the things many Americans are not aware of is Sharia is starting to encroach on our constitutional rights. In fact, Sharia is even being practiced in this country, which is quite against the Constitution. But it's a creeping Sharia, and most people don't even realize it's happening. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, let's kind of get caught up on some of the news. This is from the Christian News, Breaking News, Spiritual Perspective, April 1st. This is by Reverend C.J. Connor, and he's writing in, not the Christian News, Charisma News, I'm sorry, and written by Reverend C.J. Connor. Last week, Arlene's Flowers in Washington was fined $1,000 for declining a request to provide floral arrangements for the religious wedding service of gay men that she had served secularly for years. Now, you know the story about Brunel Stutzman and what has happened to her. Well, the state attorney general for the state of Washington decided to, even though the gay man who started this whole thing allegedly didn't want it, his boy or his husband wanted it, and then he declined, and so the state attorney general decided to take it on himself to ruin Arlene Stutzman. Anyway, Baronelle Stutzman, I'm sorry. Citing her Christian convictions against participating in pagan rituals, Grandma Baronelle Stutzman failed to prevail in her religious freedom case. Now, if you think it couldn't happen here, folks, think again. It could happen here. And we have a very aggressive LGBTQ community right here in Pocatello. They were able to foist a law on us to give themselves special status in the community. It can happen anywhere where the LGBTQ are determined to change natural law to their law. Faithful American Christians are increasingly under attack across the country by the gay lobby. Religious freedom is being radically and swiftly eroded. Remember the Houston Five, whose sermons and emails were subpoenaed as a repercussion of their opposition to the radical gay lobby in Houston, Texas? It is a mark of national shame that the Religious Freedom Bill in Indiana, a bill that mirrors President Clinton's Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, known as RFRA, is being exploited by the gay lobby during Holy Week. Remember this from April 1st. The country has been forced into a national conversation on deviant sexuality during the holiest time for Christians, time of year for Christians. Even radicalized jihadis have put war on hold during Ramadan, said Reverend C.J. Connor, author of Jesus and the Culture Wars, Reclaiming the Lord's Prayer. I'm encouraging Christian pastors, churches, florists, bakers, and boutique merchants to join together in concrete and deliberate steps to take a stand and protect the principle of American Christian unity, said Connor. Here's how. Florists, bakers, and other wedding-related businesses, Christian merchants who serve weddings can protect their religious liberty by only offering their services to Christian churches in exclusive binding contracts. Merchants can continue to provide all other services as usual, but protect the free practice of their faith by contracting exclusively and specifically with Bible-believing congregations to provide wedding services for their members. Merchants would not be limited to only one faith community, but would be free from offering wedding services to the general public. Faithful Christian congregations who rent space out for wedding-related events or services as an outreach ministry, should modify their organizational bylaws so that their facilities are only available for use to confirmed members of the congregation. This is a good general rule of thumb for every congregation. As the gay lobby expands its agenda to target Christians and houses of worship directly, congregations that rent their space to any couple are at risk for costly legal action if they do not also rent to gay couples. Congregations should also begin to identify Christian florists, bakers, caterers, and wedding boutiques that share their values and enter into exclusive binding contracts for the service of Christian weddings. This will help ensure the success of Christian-owned businesses while also protecting the religious liberty of Christian wedding merchants and congregations. The burgeoning agenda of the gay lobby will soon turn to other targets on the horizon, including the fair use of sacred worship spaces. And we've already seen this happen in England. I reported this to you about a year ago when a homosexual man decided to sue the Church of England because they wouldn't perform a gay wedding ceremony, and he was unhappy because, in his words, he didn't get his way. The burgeoning agenda of the gay lobby will soon turn to other targets on the horizon. Okay, in fact, the Alliance Defending Freedom/Faith has warned that the next battlefront for Christian liberty could well be where churches charter Boy Scout troops. As you may be aware, most, if not every ward in the Latter-day Saints here in Pocatello has a Boy Scout movement, has a troop in the wards. If not a ward, certainly in a stake. Boy Scouts are very active here in this city, and most of the activities, not all of them, but most of them are through the Latter-day Saints. So this is a serving warning that churches, including Latter-day Saints, where it's very active, could certainly be at risk. Congregations that allow the Boy Scouts to use their facilities either for rent or for free are at risk of legal liability should they refuse to perform a gay marriage on the basis of religious liberty. The Boy Scouts have embraced the gay lobby and their agenda. It is telling that during the penitential season, the nation has been embroiled in discussion over sin. I urge Christians to pray for the leaders of the gay lobby that the resurrected Lord may lead them out of their darkness and into His light, that they may repent and God might forgive them for their persecution of Christians, said Reverend Connor. For faithful Christians, we are called to the same long-suffering as our Lord Jesus, who gave His all for us on the cross at Good Friday. To the extent that we can peaceably sidestep and not engage the gay lobby at all, we will be free for gospel mission, to be a holy blessing to our communities and to the world. And that was from Charisma News. I don't know who this Reverend C.J. Connor is. This was a letter to the editor on April the 2nd. I thought it was very well written, and I know the man who wrote it. He's quite articulate. He's a good writer. Makes very good point here. This was a letter to the editor, and it's titled, Thank a Christian. As Mr. Leonard Hitchcock spews his atheistic progressive venom against Christianity and the divinity of the Lord, what he doesn't seem to want to recognize is that the only reason his tirades can be made in a public forum is because of the very religion he so frequently reviles. It is true that the primitive Christian religion got off to a rocky start. The early church leaders, the apostles, were killed off by political leaders at the time who considered the fledgling church as an affront to Roman rule and Greek philosophy. This also caused the concept of God to evolve from a Jewish literalist view of God to a more Grecian metaphysical concept of Him. After being nearly destroyed by state-sanctioned persecution, the church found new life when the Emperor Constantine needed a state religion to consolidate his power and chose this persecuted sect as the religion of choice. Unlike the Jewish religion, in which all young boys were carefully educated in the scriptures of their religion, this church, which ultimately became the Roman Catholic Church, educated only the elites, the wealthy, and the priesthood in the specifics of the doctrine of the church, feeling that the common man should not have direct access to the scriptures. Thus we entered into the dark ages in which God's full word was withheld from the general population. At this time of history had the Spanish Inquisition, extreme poverty, feudalism, disease, and other events that atheists are so fond of pointing out as examples of how Christianity has been. As a side note, the much reviled Crusades were not an attempt to force Muslims to accept Christ. Rather, they were fought to recover Christian lands from the same radical Islam that we are seeing today, ruthlessly destroying anything and anyone in their path to establish caliphate rule over the Middle East and ultimately the world. Surely an historian like you must be aghast at the wanton destruction of priceless historical artifacts being perpetrated by Islamic fundamentalists in the cradle of civilization. Yet you never write about that subject. Such is the hypocrisy of the left. It was not until the advent of the printing press that the general population was given the chance to read Scripture. And this enlightenment brought about the Reformation and Renaissance in Western culture, which led to the concepts of liberty and limited government. Thus was formed the basis by which the Christian founders of our republic established a more perfect union, in which principles of equality and the free pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness were possible. Under the guidance of Christianity, with God's word in the hands of the common man, the Western world has many achievements. These include the illumination of the vile practice of slavery, the elevation of the individual above the state, the freedom to be what they want to be, the elimination of extreme poverty. Poverty in the West is seen as wealth in third world countries, and many illnesses in the West. Its prosperity, unlike anything envisioned in the past, and yet, yes, Mr. Hitchcock, it allows the freedom for atheists and progressives to express their vile opinions, attacking the very religion that is the author of their freedom to do so. So when you have a chance, thank a Christian for the contributions that their religion has had on your freedom to do whatever you are. May God's truth make you free. That was written by George Swenson, and I thought it was very well written out. A brief, well, this is a little bit lengthy, so I'm not going to engage in this one right now. This was, oh, maybe it won't be too bad. LDS leaders push traditional marriage, and this was in kind of a response to all the stuff, all the hoopla when they passed the non-discrimination ordinance in Salt Lake, or they made it a state law. The LGBTQ wanted to show that, see, even the bastion of Mormon religion is accepting us. Well, that isn't at all what that is. But let's cover a couple of other things here. Here's an April 7th letter. When my brother married a girl that I, for various reasons, did not approve of, he asked me to be the best man at his wedding. Since he had been unavailable to be the best man at my own wedding, I knew the heartache of not having him there and did not wish to put him through that. I explained to him that I did not in any way condone the marriage. However, since I respected him, I would go through with it. The problem is with the people who attended the wedding. I had neither the time nor the inclination to speak to every one of the attendees and let my feelings be known to them, nor would I be so crass as to make any sort of a public announcement about it. But now there are many people out there who think I condoned that wedding. To me, this is the base issue between Bible-believing Christians and the LGBT. Everybody seems to think there is nothing wrong with baking a silly cake for a wedding, but it is the very act of baking the cake that speaks to the world that the baker condones the union. The baker can tell the gay couple all he wants that he does not condone the wedding, but everybody there will see the beautiful cake that was made and want to know where it came from. And the baker has no way to explain to all of them that he does not support this kind of union. Actions speak louder than words, and when the action says you condone that which you do not, no words you can speak will undo the perception otherwise. Christians don't hate gay people. We hate the sin and do not wish to associate it with it. And that was written by Randy Chase here in Pocatello on April 7th. Now here's real quick, just one paragraph from April 7th, Muslims. According to Wikipedia, there are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. 10% of 1.6 billion is 160 million. Words can scarcely convey the degree of relief I felt upon reading O'Donnell's words in his April 6th editorial, explaining that there are actually only 160 million of them who, if given the opportunity, would want to cut off my head with a dull knife. And that was C.R. Stuckey here in town. Well said, Mr. Stuckey. And speaking of Islam, let us show, I'd like to share with you a contrast, if you will. Now, As I've shared with you many times, and I'm dismayed by this, but the fact remains that here at our university there are some 2,000 matriculating students from the Middle East. We will have to assume, not knowing otherwise, that most of them, if not all of them, are Muslim. And the university is actively recruiting them to come to our little town. 2,000 Muslims, and that's just the university students. That's a big percentage of people who do not like Christianity, do not like Judaism, and they are being purposely recruited to come to the university. I'm told for many reasons, not the least of which I'm told is because Dr. Velas wants them actively recruited because he is determined to get enough money to build a medical school here in Pocatello. That's hearsay. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but the Muslims do have the money and they do pay, and they don't have to be dunned. And I'm told also that nobody really seems to care if they converse in English and if they even finish their core studies. In fact, I'm told that nobody even cares if they show up, as long as they pay. That may or may not be true. But there is a very definite contrast between the world of Islam, and forget about the students here who are coming here to learn Western culture, if you will. The world of Islam is still trying, these 160 million, if you will, are still trying to return us to the 7th century thinking. And with 7th century thinking, we would never have got to the moon or anything else. But there is a definite contrast, a chasmic divide between Islam and what it has, quote unquote, produced, which for the most part is death and horror, and the rest of the world. And a very real contrast is what's happening in little tiny Israel. Now, the Muslim world is 800 times larger than little tiny Israel. Little tiny Israel with about 12 million total people, and that includes Arabs who are allowed to vote and carry on their lives right there in Israel, just like any other Israeli, unlike any place else in the Middle East, like in Saudi Arabia where you're not even allowed to build a church. But there are some really amazing differences between what 21st century thinking has and what Islam has. Josh, are we good on, are we wound up for that segment? Please watch this.
Israel is, by many measures, the country relative to its population that's done the most to contribute to the technology revolution.
Now, when you look at the NASDAQ, companies are listed from around the world. There's one country, though, that truly stands out, and that is Israel.
If you go to the Middle East looking for oil, you don't need to stop in Israel. But if you go looking for brains, for energy, for integrity, it's the only stop you need to make in the Middle East.
For over 60 years, Israel has been at war, the target of terrorist attacks, and boycotted by many of her neighbors. Yet somehow, during this same time, she has built a nation, transformed an arid wasteland into an agricultural miracle, and evolved into one of the most technologically innovative countries in the world. How did a nation of 7 million manage this transformation? Mayor Brand runs Google's Israel operation.
The foundation of Israel itself could be seen as an entrepreneurial project. The pioneers who came to build Israel from scratch, they are real entrepreneurs. They took a huge risk. They came to a place that doesn't have much natural resources, that there are a lot of threats from the outside, but they still had a great vision in building a successful country, which means that from the foundation of this country, people were already experienced in risk-taking.
As president of one of Israel's premier science research institutions, Daniel Zajman thinks part of the explanation is deeply embedded in Jewish culture.
We are allowed to ask questions. We are allowed to discuss it. This is very unique, in fact, to the Jewish religion.
A willingness to challenge conventional wisdom distinguishes Israel's approach to science.
For many scientists, what is on the paper and has been published must be the truth. For an Israeli scientist, what has been published is something what might still question and maybe push further.
Israel has this intense penchant for constantly questioning and debating and challenging, which is essential for any innovation-based economy.
Dan Senor is co-author of Startup Nation, Israel's Economic Miracle.
Some of the factors that have been key to Israel's economic success: the role of the military. Almost every single Israeli goes through a leadership experience at a very young age. They're taught at age 18, 19, 20 years old, what it means to lead, what it means to improvise, what it means to be entrepreneurial, albeit out in the battlefield. Civilian R&D spending. Israel spends the highest percentage of its economy compared to any country in the world on R&D. Israel has cutting-edge policies on immigration and assimilation. There are over 70 nationalities represented in Israel.
The rapid integration of these immigrants through an aggressive Hebrew language immersion program has ensured they participate in Israel's innovation.
If you look at the Soviet wave of immigration, 750,000, tens of thousands of those had these remarkable degrees in mathematics and science. It was just this huge influx of technological talent.
This talent has fueled more startups than anywhere outside the Silicon Valley, bringing the world's leading corporations to Israel for their top R&D talent. And this economic engine has in turn strengthened the young nation.
If you describe Zionism as having a prosperous, strong Jewish state in Israel, obviously the high-tech sector goes hand in hand with that.
But Israel isn't just innovating for its own ends.
A lot of the innovation that comes out from Israel changes the lives of people all over the world.
I think that the time where we could export oranges is basically gone, because if you really look at what we can do here and what we can export, then it's basically knowledge.
Whether it's in irrigation and saving water, smart use of energy, space investigation, nanotechnology, green technology.
The world has a lot to learn from Israel, especially at a time when there is so much yearning for an innovation-based economic strategy.
For me, Zionism is not only about the prosperity of Jewish people in Israel, but also Jewish people bringing more prosperity to the world.
All right, now, I used that because I wanted to juxtapose that between what we're being told about Israel and how they are beating up on the poor people in the Gaza Strip and all that, and the reality of the real world in which some people don't really want to open their eyes to it. Now, there was a big flap recently about a letter that was written by I think it was an assemblywoman or somebody in the legislator who made some comments about Islam that some people took umbrage to. Not the least was which Dr. Rahim here in town took umbrage. In fact, he took out a full-page ad, in essence, claiming his passion for the United States and his being an American and all that. All very, very good. You know, each culture that has come to this nation had to prove itself. You don't come here, establish a business, and automatically be accepted by everybody. There is always going to be somebody that doesn't like you for whatever reasons. But if you have a thin skin, doesn't matter who you are, if you have a thin skin and you are defensive about your background, there could be some real problems. If you've studied anything about immigrants coming to this country, you may have studied, as I have in studying my Irish history, about a time in New England when they had signs in windows, no Irishmen need apply for work, or signs stuck in the public parks, dogs and Irishmen stay off the grass. This is not something I'm making up. You can read it for yourself. Germans were terribly persecuted in this country, Americans of German heritage, because of the First War, and again somewhat to the Second War. Italian Americans took a hell of a beating because of the mob and other perceived notions, and because when the second wave of Catholics came, or Irish came here, they were mostly Catholics, as were the Italians. So they took a beating for that. So, you know, it's nice to establish. Dr. Rahim has established a foundation, and I give him kudos. This is a very good thing. He does a lot of good work. But you can't buy your way into just being automatically accepted because you're here and you're a nice guy. You have to prove it. And many of us, my generations in this nation started in the mid-1700s. There are many that go back way before me, many who have just come recently. But each generation has had to prove itself. And I will accept most generations based upon what they believe about our country and how they can contribute to our country. But it's not just you're right because you come to this country. I'm not addressing Dr. Rahim, I'm saying anybody, whether it's illegal Mexicans or legal East Indians, doesn't matter. Just because you came here does not automatically make you the good guy and everybody else the bad guy, because maybe they're suspicious of your background or whatever. Now, this was a letter to the editor on April 10th regarding Dr. Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Rahim, for your full page and as well as your recent efforts to stand up for your Muslim faith. When I read Becky Prestwich's article, the only fear I felt was in thinking that history often repeats itself. Sadly, her words reminded me of the numerous books I have read regarding those who were in the Holocaust and World War II. The sun is setting on the lives of those final few who survived the camps. I ask myself, has humanity learned? The words said by some back then in Germany toward Jews and others were similar in the beginning. First, people incited words of fear, then intolerance, finally apathy. This allowed people to be treated as objects and led to unimaginable atrocities. Intolerance has happened with countless other religions in the past and continues today worldwide. I believe in a God that is compassionate, merciful, and loving. Yes, and that's a Western God, much different from Allah. I believe in a government that allows for a person to live religion according to his or her own conscience. Yes, that's the Western form of government, our republic, our representative republic. It is not Sharia. The fires of fear must be quenched with hope, understanding, and empathy. I do not know much about the Muslim faith, and there's the catch. There are a lot of people, just like this lady, who have no idea of the realities of Islam and Sharia and those other things, who are willing to spout off because they feel uncomfortable or because they're honestly compassionate, because they have the right feelings, and they forget there is a chasm, there's a world of difference between Islam and the rest of the world. I do not know much about the Muslim faith, but I have sought to understand what I can. I hope there will be more opportunities in the future for me and for others to mingle with those of the Muslim faith. May we come together, all come together in compassion and love. Joseph Smith, a previous prophet in my church, stated, if it had been more demonstrated that I've been willing to die for a Mormon, I'm bold to declare before heaven that I'm just as ready to die in defending the rights of a Presbyterian, a Baptist, or a good man of any other denomination. It is a love of liberty which inspires my soul. And this is from History of the Church 5/498. Laurie Yates of Chubbuck. Well, Laurie, allow me, if you will, to enlighten you a little bit as to perhaps why Miss Prestwich, and I haven't read the whole article. All I know is what I've seen in ISJ, which leaves me a lot of room for skepticism, and some comments. But let me just tell you, first of all, let me put it this way. What is Islam? Why does Islam differ so much from what you think you know about our way of life? Well, let's see if I can give you a little bit of an understanding. First of all, Islam is more than just a religion. The Quran makes up the basis for Islam, which is about 14% of the overall. There's a trilogy here that makes up Islam. Islam is a political status, and the Quran is a portion of that. That's the anchor for Islam. But Islam is political, and you have to understand that to understand what it means. Now, you may not be aware that right now in this nation, right here in this state, there are some places that are already practicing Sharia, which is the Arabic word for law, Sharia law. You may not even know that. But I can tell you that every time a textbook has to be approved by the Muslims, that is because they believe in Sharia, and they will tell you, well, we need to have this say this and thus and such. The moment we change that textbook from the American way to Sharia, we are practicing Sharia. We have just suborned the Constitution. The moment a university has a special foot washing station for Muslims and a special prayer area for Muslims, they have succumbed. They are actually practicing Sharia, which is contrary to our representative Republican constitutional way of life. Sharia is basically, in many ways, the antithesis of our Constitution and has no place in our country. The Constitution is our final word of law. But let me tell you a little bit about Sharia. Here are current and historical events in America that are driven by Sharia. On September 11, 2001, jihadists attacked and destroyed the World Trade Center in New York. This atrocity was in compliance to the doctrine of jihad found in the Sharia. The attack was a political action motivated by a religious mandate for endless jihad. Look it up. Textbooks in America must be approved by Islamic councils. This is in accordance with Sharia law. American employers and schools are met with demands for time and space to do Islamic prayer. Remember, they pray 5 times a day. These demands are based on Sharia. The American banking system is becoming Islamicized with Sharia financing. We'll go beyond that. Universities are asked to provide sexually segregated swimming pools and other athletic facilities for Muslim women. Hospitals are being sued for not providing Sharia-compliant treatment. College courses at the college level do not use critical thinking regarding the history and doctrine of Islam. Under Sharia, nothing about Islam may be criticized. Muslim charities give money to jihadists, Islamic terrorists, as per Sharia. American prisons are strongholds of Islamic proselytizing. Workplaces are being made Islamic worship sites through special rooms and time off to pray. This is in accordance with Sharia. Islamic refugees bring all their wives for welfare and medical treatment to America. Remember, a Muslim man is allowed 4 wives. American authorities will not act even when presented with evidence. Polygamy is included in the Sharia. Wars were fought in Iraq and Afghanistan to implement constitutions whose first article is the supremacy of Sharia. Islamic scholars claim Islamic law, this is their claim, Islamic law is perfect, universal, and eternal. The laws of the United States are temporary, limited, and will pass away. It is the duty of every Muslim to obey the laws of Allah, the Sharia. U.S. laws are man-made, while, according to them, Sharia law is sacred and comes from the only legitimate God, Allah. Sharia is based on the principles found in the Quran and other Islamic religious political texts. There are no common principles between American law and Sharia. Under Sharia law, there is no freedom of religion, no freedom of speech, no freedom of thought, no freedom of artistic expression, no freedom of the press. There is no equality of peoples. A non-Muslim, which is called a kafir, is never equal to a Muslim. There is no equal protection under Sharia for different classes of people. Justice is dualistic, with one set of laws for Muslim males and different laws for women and non-Muslims, or kafirs. There are no equal rights for women. Women can be beaten. A non-Muslim cannot bear arms. There is no democracy, since democracy means that a non-Muslim is equal to a Muslim. Our Constitution is a man-made document of ignorance. Jahilah, that must submit to Sharia. Non-Muslims are dhimmis, third-class citizens. All governments must be ruled by Sharia. Unlike common law, Sharia is not interpreted, nor can it be changed. There is no golden rule. That's very, very skimming the surface. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to talk more about Sharia because it is a creeping change to our very way of life. And if we don't stop it, if we don't become cognizant of it, like this lady who means well, but is suborning her own birthright, we're in a lot of trouble. In the meantime, oh, and remember this. Remember, never take sleeping pills and laxatives before you go to bed. God bless you. See you next week. Good night.